Okay. I hate these masks because they make my glasses fog out.
I'm having a hard time reading because of them.
How's Logan doing in Sydney?
They're great. Yeah, they're really good.
What's Logan's plans?
He's going to Kent.
He's going to live at home and commute?
Yeah, yeah. He's not a live on campus guy. He's computer science major, minor with a concentration in data analytics, and a minor in data analytics, user interface design is the concentration. He'll be fine. Yeah,
Did you know that my major was information systems, computer
I didn't know
science?
that.
Yeah, I had a dual major of elementary education and math.
Really? Oh yeah, he's like loves data, loves science, loves all of that.
And I was that kid, except I couldn't stand not without the people interaction, so that's why I went to education around
He
that.
would rather not deal with the people. He's like,
But I was that kid that was seriously, I'd get home from school in 5th grade, and my dad bought me the TV 1000 and Compute Gazette magazine. And I was that kid that sat there and typed in thousands of hours.
I believe it. That's
Just
what,
to see something bounce across
that's
the
how
screen.
my
I need to invest in some
because
more.
he's
Because I keep
technology.
breaking mine.
It's so crazy.
But I'm also like a bull in a china shop most of my life. So, there's that. I can't fix that. I cannot believe Kristen Fennell is not there.
What?
Never seen this.
I made it.
Your microphone is on,
I heard.
and you have to talk really close to it,
Okay.
and you can't say things about people because
And we
they'll hear
believe
you.
we've solved the live stream issue. We had
That's what
texts in
Kevin was
yesterday,
telling me. Good.
and it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's direct piped into the studio, which then direct pipes into the YouTube feed. But everything.
I know there was a
fortunately,
networking thing.
Well, we were worried that they were missing pieces. We were worried that we didn't have what we needed.
Yeah, and luckily
it
we
wasn't.
did.
It was programming and show you to push this button, and
Perfect.
apparently there were like 100 and some different options. And
Do all these people
just
know
didn't
that we're not taking time?
Oh my God.
Not that he wouldn't know, but
Can we throw a blurb in?
Yeah, he said it was beyond his ability to understand what.
I know I read the agenda. You just mentioned it. I was bitten in the mud puddle. Almost didn't make it.
What happened?
I come through the back,
Ew.
and it was muddier than expected, and I stepped in the mud and almost fell.
You're okay.
Had to back up and go around.
You're okay.
Oh,
You gonna be okay, Andy?
I mean, I made it.
All right, perfect.
I did make it. So far.
yes, sir.
All these people, you think we're having snacks or something?
I wish we had some.
You ready to start the service?
Give me 30 seconds to figure out board docs. I, Roger. All right, we're good to go.
Ready?
As I'll
Everybody
ever
good
be.
down there?
I'm smiling. You just can't see it. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Tracy, ready?
Yep.
Waiting for Mike. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the special meeting of the Board of Education for August 6, 2020. Mr. Scarsapino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Baba,
Here.
Mrs. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Gibson,
Here.
Mr. Grimm,
Here.
Mr. Violi.
Here.
Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this being a special board meeting, we normally don't have comments, but if you do have any questions after we go through everything, please either email us or go to the FAQ page and submit your questions that way. But hopefully a lot of those questions will be cleared up tonight. Moving on to item number 2. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through E.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Kevin, can we call out item D for a separate vote?
Say that again. B.
Can we call out item D for a separate vote?
D is in dog?
D as in dog.
Yes. Okay, so we are voting on items B and C only. Any other discussion?
E, there's nothing on E.
Okay, hearing none, call for the vote for items B and C only.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Baba,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes?
Mr. Violi.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item D, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the hiring of the following contingent upon all certification, licensure requirements being met, and those are listed on your board docs. And D. Hold on, we have a little glitch here. Apparently we had an update. Stand by.
What do I need to do? Mine doesn't match yours.
It does not. I just did. Okay, my apologies. You said item D?
D.
Okay. CJ, I didn't have mine refreshed, so we had B and C. Do we need to include E as well? Do we need a separate vote for that?
Mr. Grimm, I just want to verify, item D as resignations being pulled off separately, and item E, hiring of personnel, is being pulled off separately?
We did not vote on that because I did not have the current version up. There was an edit made before
Okay.
or after I logged in.
So items A, B, and C were all voted on under the consent agenda.
That's correct.
Items D and E are being pulled off separately.
That is correct. That's how it was voted on, correct.
Okay.
You're looking for E right now?
So we have item D and E. Which one did you want pulled?
D.
Okay.
D.
All right, we'll do D and E separate. Item D, it is recommended the board accept the resignations of the following. Those are Katie Nagy and Jenny Markey.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment on this.
Mr. Violi, speak into your mic more.
You got to bring it
Sorry.
closer.
I'd like to make a comment on the resignation of Katie Nagy. It just seems odd that for the school system to be put in the predicament that we've been put in by her accepting a position at the last board meeting, and then in between that resigning because she found another position. I know that we vote on contracts, but it seems like sometimes the contracts are only one-sided or held accountable to one way and not the other way. I'm not happy about the way that it was done, and I'll just make sure that that was stated in the comments.
Mr. Violi, that's why I asked to have it called out specifically.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Hearing none, please call for the vote on item D.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
No.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
No. Item D passes 3-2. Moving on to item E. Hiring of personnel, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the hiring of the following contingent upon all certification, licensure requirements being met. And again, those are on your board docs.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes?
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's recommendations, Mr. Dalbaugh.
Thank you. I'm going to go over to the podium to make my presentation. Okay, before I begin to go through the Restart Plan Board, I wanted to acknowledge over 100 staff members, certified classified administrators participated in focus groups from about July 1st or 2nd all the way through this last week. A lot of hours were put into that, into this document, but also into the details that they're drilling down into at the building level. We met with our principals today for their opening day administrative meeting, and they're all at various stages in planning. But I wanted to acknowledge the fact that they have a monumentous task ahead of them. They've already got a good jump on it, and they're doing a great job. So I do want to acknowledge that. And also something that you won't see as part of this restart plan, Andreas and I are going to begin recording, for lack of a better word, town hall videos. We're going to begin doing those tomorrow. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and take each component of the FAQ that we're asked that you see online, and we're going to try and have a dialogue, a recorded dialogue, using a Zoom format that we can then post on the webpage. What we found is that some folks, when they take a look at that FAQ document or even the restart document, even though there's bullet point headings that you can have hyperlinks, a lot of times people don't consume information that way. They would rather hear it. So we're going to make an attempt of doing some sort of a face-to-face video recording, several of those of the hot topics, and we're going to post those on the website. Our goal will be to post the first 2 or 3 tomorrow afternoon. So I wanted you to know that we're doing that. Give Andres, wherever he's sitting, that was his idea, and we're going to be doing that tomorrow. And then finally, for the folks that are in the audience, folks that are at home that are watching, when I put the restart plan up on the board, you may not be able to see it at home. I know you're watching via YouTube, but it is on the website, so I'll be going through exactly what you see on the website. And finally, before I jump into the restart plan, under the consent agenda, the board did vote to approve the change of the student day to September 1st. So students will be starting September 1st. So I didn't want anyone to miss that because consent agenda items do go very quickly. So students start September 1st. We're going to welcome our teaching staff back on the 14th, and that's going to give them about 14 days to plan and get ready for the school year under the multiple contingencies. So I did want to point that out for the audience and the viewers at home that did not necessarily know it was under the consent agenda. So September 1st is now the official student start date. All right, so I'm going to bring up the restart plan. And I apologize, I usually use a Mac. I don't usually use a Chromebook, so I don't know if I'll scroll correctly here. So the restart plan there's been only a few subtle changes. I am not going to read everything to it, but read everything to the folks. I'm only going to highlight a few key areas. But we did try to create hyperlinks at the beginning of the table of contents that can jump to specific sections that you do want to see. The first section is about our feedback survey that was given earlier on in the spring. I'm not going to go through that, but we've talked about that data before. Moving on down to our first section. So it's divided into Three different sections: our feedback section from our parents. Section 2 are recommendations and considerations, and Section 3 would be our phased-in approach to returning to school. Again, I'm not going to go through every bullet point, but I do want to highlight some things that we've talked about and then maybe have already changed. So as of yesterday, if you were watching, or day before yesterday, if you were watching Governor DeWine, he did proclaim now that they're expecting all students in grades K to 12 to wear masks to school. The board policy that was passed by all of you last board meeting said grades 3 to 12 were mandatory, with pre-K to 2 were preferred at all times. So we are going to need to change our board policy at the next meeting to reflect the governor's order. So that expect that board policy to come to you prior to the meeting, but it will say basically in grades K to 12, the expectations are students wear masks when they're in school. So that was a change. One thing I do want to talk about too is I've had a significant number of questions to me about face coverings, and it's to be noted that students or staff that have medical issues, the policy that you passed last time, it is online, it is in our restart plan. Any student or staff member that has a documented medical condition that does not permit them to wear a face covering, they just have to produce that documented excuse from a doctor to me. That's confidential, and then I will approve it or not approve it based on what's written on the paper. I did have a great question the other day. A staff member emailed me and asked if he could wear a face shield in lieu of a mask. That actually is not considered a face covering. So let me answer this in two parts. A face shield is only going to present anything that's coming at you. A face shield, like those plastic barriers that a lot of people are talking about, the virus unfortunately is transmitted in the air and droplets. I know that you guys have all probably heard this, but face shields only protect any type of direct expulsion from a student or someone coming toward your eyes, which are mucous membranes which can accept the virus in. If you're not wearing a mask over your mouth and your nose, in addition to that face covering, you're not going to have the same protection as a face covering. So I did have a parent then say, well, my student can't wear a mask, but my doctor said to wear a face shield. That is completely permissible. That face shield will offer some level of protection, but it does not offer the same protection that a mask is, which is why our face covering policy is what it is. So that's been a kind of a question I probably had close to 20 questions on masks versus the shields. Certainly, a mask and a shield is even another layer of protection. So, and then staff, we have ordered, I'm hoping that we get them in before school. We're going to ask that staff provide their own masks. However, we are going to purchase 2 for every staff member that can be cleaned and laundered on your own. And I was happy and excited. We were able to find a vendor locally that we're going to be able to secure enough face masks, 1 for each staff member, that's actually clear in the front if you want it, so that you can then, the students can see you speaking. And I know that all of us, there's some importance at different levels, but especially at our primary levels and with our related services. Being able to see a teacher's facial expressions, the way they form words is very important. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that those will come in. So that's what I wanted to say about masks and face coverings. Board, I don't know if you had any comments or questions about that before I move on. So another question I keep getting are about the physical distancing measures. Clear back at the beginning of the summer, I had our maintenance team led by Dave Clark. They measured every single space in every single building, including the annex, to analyze could we adequately space kids apart at 3 feet and at 6 feet, and then gave me the capacity for each room and each area in the buildings. I have that data, the principals have that data, and we are going to have to probably purge some non-essential furniture from some rooms. There are a couple areas in our small group rooms that we're going to have to really watch our capacities, but all of our classrooms currently in the district can meet the classroom ratios at 3 feet. The CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with Joe Diorio, who we've been told to work with our local health department. So Joe Diorio is the director of the Portage County Health Department, and he has given all Portage County schools to, when we are in school, we can use the seating configuration of 3 feet, because the 3 feet is adequate when you have everyone is wearing the masks. Now, we are working and having conversations. There are some student groups that we know are not going to be able to wear a mask, so we're going to need to work to get more than that 3 feet apart. But when students are together in rooms, all of our rooms have appropriate capacity. There will be a couple rooms that we're going to have to pay attention to. The principals have that data. Small group rooms, we're going to have to watch our numbers with that, maybe to get creative in finding different spaces for small group. But they all meet the requirements, space requirements. So at board, I did want you to know that we did have that analyzed and we have all those spaces. So also, one thing that we were recently told, superintendents kind of gave a sigh of relief on this. One of the questions that we've all had was the challenge of students walking between classes and hallway traffic. And we were recently told by both, it was filtered down through us through Joe Dior at the Portage County Department of Health, that the concern is no longer, it's no longer a concern when students are passing in hallways, because the expectation is students are going to have masks on. The virus, if you remember, I talked about this before, but what's important to note that if I'm COVID positive, exposure is defined as being within 6 feet without a mask for more than 10 minutes. That's when they initiate contact tracing. That's when they will say that you have been exposed and you must isolate until we contact trace. So with that in mind, that's why they're saying that we're going to have to be diligent that, number one, kids can't walk down the halls and stop and talk. We're going to have to be diligent that we're going to have, it's not even as important to create one-way traffic flows as it is to create flowing traffic. We don't want congregating groups of kids. And it's going to be very important for students and staff to wear masks, which is why we passed a mask policy. So they're no longer concerned about the passing. What they are concerned about is if we pass, we stop, we talk for extended period of times, and if the mask comes off. So I would encourage everyone to try and memorize that statement, because you're going to be asked about that a lot. What is the definition of exposure? Exposure is defined as less than 6 feet without a mask for more than 10 minutes with a COVID positive person. That's only when the Portage County Department of Health will initiate contact tracing, issue isolation notices, and issue quarantine notices. So I did want to talk about that. I know that I talked about that in the physical distancing, but I thought that was important to talk about it there. Are there any questions about that? Okay.
I have a question about masks, just
okay.
for a quick second. Can
Yep.
you hear me okay? Sorry.
No, you're fine.
And I know I asked you this independently, is a question about mask breaks.
Yes.
You know, the reality of having a child in a classroom and a staff member in a classroom for the number of hours with a mask on the entire time. You know, what are we doing about that?
So that's been a hot topic with our superintendents when we've been in our groups with Mr. Diorio, and also I've been attending all of the Cuyahoga County who they are in the red. So it's kind of been a different conversation up there, but relevant because we could end up in the red at any time. They have been consistent in the guidance that mask breaks have to occur either in one of two places. The number one preferable place is outside. That is the number one preferable place. The second preferable place would be in a wide open area where you can get at least 6 feet apart between each person, and they are not interacting. So we're not getting into a gymnasium, we're taking our masks off and we're yelling across to each other and we're hooping and hollering and dancing. No. A mask break is going to be defined as you take it off and you sit and do something by yourself or an activity to give a break. At the elementary, I'll speak to that. You know, it could look like going outside, sitting your group around under a tree, trying to get that 6 foot distance apart, and maybe the teacher reading a story or a book, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just sitting and relaxing for a few minutes, masks off. And then the important part of that is that teaching our students, all of our students, and I've had to teach myself this because I catch myself doing it all the time, is not touching your eyes, not touching your nose, not touching your mouth. But once you have that mask off and you put that mask back on, the next thing that happens after you enter that room is you need to re-sanitize your hands. But Tracy, to directly answer the mask question, those are the two scenarios that they've talked to us about.
And we're prepared to allow time for that in the winter as well, because when we can't go outside.
Every building's going to have to come up with a plan to do that, because we have to give kids mask breaks.
Okay.
And it's going to be unique to every building because every building serves different challenges. I think probably the easiest places to do it would be the buildings that either have empty classrooms or wide open spaces. DEFR has a lot of empty classrooms. You could create a mask-free room that you walk in, there's no furniture, you adequately stay 6 foot apart, they leave, it gets sanitized, wiped down, and you create a schedule. That's just an idea. Gymnasiums, cafeterias, common areas, and then outside. It's going to be a challenge. It's absolutely going to be a challenge. But I agree with you because I can't stand wearing this thing. And so I can't imagine our teachers who are standing up in front of kids for 8 hours having to keep this on all day, and then kids too.
Sure.
Although I have been encouraged, I've seen a lot of kids, even as little as 2 years old, wearing their masks out. So parents are getting kids out there and they are wearing their masks and they're doing that. It's becoming the part of the new normal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. So the next part of the plan, again, I'm not going to read each part of it, but it talks about each area, each grade level, pre-K, and then by building about some of the things that we're trying to do. One of the things that the principals have been tasked with, and they're going to be asking staff to help them with this, again, are creating, the biggest challenge in my mind is not traffic flow. I think teachers are super creative when they can set up classrooms, spacing kids apart if we give them the number of people, so forth and so on. I think the biggest challenge is going to be our lunch. Right now we just as all of you know or you may not know, we contracted with the nutrition group. The nutrition group has lived through COVID already. So what you're going to see is a little bit different with our students. Pre-K 12, breakfast and lunch are going to become grab-and-go options. So we're going to still try to create nice displays. We're going to have I showed pictures of the food options. Those can all still be achieved in grab-and-go options. Fresh pizza, fresh subs, roll wraps, fresh salads. Those are all going to be done, but they're going to be done in a grab-and-go concept. So it's going to look very different, especially for, actually all of our kids, because all of our kids are used to going through a line saying, yeah, I want that, no, I don't want that, yeah, I want that. It's going to be more, if I want that, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go. So it's going to be, and the nutrition group has already talked to Andreas, and we've been working out some ideas of maybe different stations of grab and go so you don't have congregation. As long as you have flow, you're okay. The principals were told today, as corny as this sounds, that you need to kind of follow the concept of Apollo 13. We can't look back at us and say, that's not going to work. No, you can't say that anymore because we have to think completely different about everything we do. Apollo 13, we couldn't tell those 3 astronauts that we couldn't fit a round hole into a square or a triangle, whatever it was, because they were going to die. So they had to figure it out. So our charge to the principals today is that you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to be creative, and you're going to have to use your teacher teams and your staff teams to help you do that. For example, we have cafeterias that we can space kids 6 feet apart in, but we don't have cafeteria periods with the number of kids that you can achieve 6 feet apart. So what are you going to do? Well, we can't just hire more staff to make lots more periods because a lot of those ladies that are cooks also drive buses. And it also then affects our building schedules, and that's even more critical at our high school. As you go down, it's less as critical as far as affecting schedules, but then we also have teacher lunches and teacher planning time. So you can't just say we're going to add a ton of lunches. But we do have hallways. We do have gymnasiums. We may identify classrooms. We have space in our buildings to space kids out. So the goal is going to be you're going to have to figure out a way to get kids 6 feet apart so they can take their mask off, eat, put the mask back on. And so some of our principals, I had conversations with them before today's meeting and then after also, and they're already working on it. But the mantra is going to be is that you can't do that's not an option. We need to figure out how to do it. And we've begun working on those plans. Again, I already talked about one-way hallways is not as hypercritical, although I have asked my principals when possible. It would be a good idea to stagger schedules. It would also be a good idea at the elementary, you're going to have to schedule restroom breaks and stagger restroom breaks because little kids have to go to the bathroom. If you tell them they can't go, then they all raise their hand and have to go. So that's going to be a challenge for that. At the middle school and high school, one of the big things that students are used to, although I do have my own opinion on this because my kids never used their locker, but I have suggested to them, I've not made it mandatory yet, but I'm suggesting that we eliminate the use of all lockers. That creates some challenges because there has been this idea out there that kids shouldn't carry backpacks around the building. But we're going to have to change the way we think about things. And the reason we don't want to use lockers is because at lockers, they're congregate spaces. Kids have to stop. They have to enter a combination. They have to get things in and out. And the second you put potentially 25, 30 kids in one locker bank or more, you're creating a potential dangerous situation. Even though they're wearing masks, they're congregating, they've stopped. So I've challenged our administrators to look at the lockers and look for ways to eliminate lockers. And I don't know what that looks like, but we need to figure that out. Another idea that you're going to see consistent through each one of these grade levels is the kids are not going to like this, but we need to develop strict seating charts. And why is that important? Because our educational system in the last 15 to 20 years has been built on collaboration and kids working in groups. And we're going to have to find a way to do that with a defined seating chart. The reason that is important, because if Mike goes home and develops a fever overnight, mom takes him to the doctor next day, they do a swab, he's COVID positive, the first thing the Portage County Health Department is going to say to the building administrator, what class is he in, give me a seating chart, and then they're going to go through the series of questions. Was Mike without his mask for more than 10 minutes? Yes or no? No. Okay. Show me Mike's seat. Were Mike's partners around him 3 feet or more away? It's a yes or no. They're going to go through that. That's how contract tracing will start. So they're going to look at the mask first. They're going to look at anyone in close contact. That's why strict seating charts are going to be very important, so that we can initiate contract tracing should we have to initiate it. That's going to be the same for our buses as well as cafeterias. And that's going to be a challenge. So I'm going to stop there and let you think about that, and if you have any questions on that.
Mike, one question about the lockers. Going Chromebooks one-to-one this year, do you expect that that will help in maybe eliminating some of the textbooks that will have to be carried around where maybe they could be left in the classrooms?
What we're hoping is the answer to that is yes. We're moving more toward a digital format, whether we're in school or hybrid or out of school. And we did do a significant investment in a digital curriculum that all the teachers will be trained on that first week they're back, that will address our core areas so that we can have more consistent instruction should we have to go all digital. It includes assessment. But to answer your question, yes. So there are going to be some formats where they can't do everything on their Chromebook. So some of the ideas that have been floated out there, is it possible to have a classroom set of textbooks rather than every kid carrying a textbook in and out that are wiped down by the kid before they leave? So these are the things that we're going to talk about. But the goal would be to move to a Chromebook digital format. That's not going to work in every case. But that would be the ultimate goal, is to move to a digital format. And we have begun looking at digital versions of our textbooks. Those aren't often available. A lot of our textbooks are old, so they're not available in a digital format. And a lot of publishers have gotten really smart, and they say, oh, you want our digital format of our, and they charge you more than the book. So, but that's something that we're looking at and dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, probably, well, I don't have one major frustration, it's all frustrating, but probably one of the biggest frustrations still to date is the lack of guidance in transportation. So, absent any guidance on transportation, because we have not gotten the guidance we've gotten on transportation is have every kid wear a mask at the bus stop, have every kid wear a mask on the bus, and sanitize the bus in between runs. That's the guidance we've gotten. So, we are planning on running our routes as is, and I mean, Krista Cano quoted me in the paper, and I'm going to say it again. I'm being transparent as I can be. Busing is the biggest challenge. If you are not comfortable with the potential of your child being on a bus at capacity with other students wearing a mask, then you need to find another way to get your kids to school. We have 21 buses. We have 21 routes. We do not have the capacity to transport our students on 1 to a seat or 2 to a seat. It's not possible. We can't add buses. We don't even have enough drivers. So that's a huge challenge, and I don't know how else to say it. I hope that gets better. I am going to share some data with you later, which I left over at my chair, regarding the Digital Academy and the number of people that would like to be enrolled in the Digital Academy. That could lessen the number of students on buses, but that's not a guarantee either, and I'll share that information with you in a minute, and you'll see why it's not a guarantee. But the fact of the matter is, we were hoping the state of Ohio would say that you don't have to transport non-district students anywhere. That didn't happen. We were hoping that they would allow us to declare busing impractical, so that then we could just bus small groups and then do a stipend payment in lieu of to our parents. That did not happen. The only thing they have said is wear a mask and sanitize your bus. So that's what we're going to do. And absent any other mandate from the state or suggestion from the state. Andreas is on a state board of transportation supervisors that have been trying to put their heads together on what to do. And that guidance, there hasn't been any official guidance passed down from the ODE or from the Ohio Department of Health on busing. So that's where we're at with busing. It's not something that I am happy about, but it is now what we have to deal with. And so until I have different guidance, that's the way we're moving forward with busing. Are there any questions on that or reflections, comments? It's very frustrating.
What is our plan to be cleaning the buses between routes?
We have a chemical called Nutristat that is a safe chemical for your hands, but it kills any and all bacteria. We started doing this prior to the shutdown because if you guys remember, there was a period of about 2 or 3 weeks when the virus started kicking in and we were still in school. We began doing that, spraying down the seats and wiping them. Nutristat is the chemical that we're going to issue into every classroom and on every bus, and those will be wiped down all the high-touch areas in the bus between runs, as well as in classrooms. We'll talk about that in a minute. But between runs, those buses will be sanitized with that chemical called Nutristat. And
Like the driver's just going to get up and wipe everything down, or are they just spraying?
Say that one more time.
The driver's going to be physically wiping? They just got a mister they're going to walk through?
You walk down, you spray it, you walk back and wipe. And the stuff that you don't wipe off will eventually dry.
We don't see that adding too big of a pause between routes?
It might, and we might have to adjust our routes, but that's the only way we can clean between routes.
Okay.
Because what we don't want to do...
We got to do something, but...
Yeah, we have to do something. In the best case scenario would be to hand every kid a Clorox wipe, but you can't get those, and let them do it. But the best way to make sure that our buses are all the high-touch areas are sprayed down is to have the adult in charge of the bus do that.
All right.
Anyone else? Okay. So that covers transportation. We are expecting large numbers of parents to begin doing parent drop-off. Andreas has already been working at each of the buildings to create drop-off zones. The principals are already starting to talk about ways to eliminate congregate areas and to keep flow. We had started working on a plan prior to the shutdown at SES because it had become such a problem. We had the police department help us with that, and it was beginning to work. And we're looking to refine that plan. We also have a plan for DEFR in the middle school. The middle school actually, ironically, was not one of the big issues, nor was the high school as far as traffic flow. But we are actually changing the traffic flow here at the high school as well, to where the buses are going to be and where students are going to be that are driving or being dropped off. And then we're going to try and create areas where it's not as many kids all at once and try and spread those kids out. We acknowledge that that's going to be one of the issues, and Andreas has been working very hard on that with his team. So we are addressing that. One quick thing back to busing. I don't know if I said this, but it's going to be the expectation that students wear their mask at their bus stop and wear a mask on the bus. We will have a limited supply of masks for students, but it's going to be treated as a referral to the principal if a student doesn't have a mask. We'll issue a mask, but it's going to be something that's going to be visited with the parent, because the expectation is that kids come to school with masks, and that's going to be expected at the bus stop and on the buses. We can't police bus stops, but if we roll up to a bus stop and the kids don't have a mask on, they're going to receive a reminder. Because, one of the things that I heard Lieutenant Governor Houston has a campaign out right now. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it talks a lot about kids need to take responsibility for this. And that's kindergartners all the way through high school, but this is probably a little more relevant to our high school students. If our high school students want to have their high school experience, if they want to play in band, if they want to play volleyball, if they want to be on an athletic team, our coaches and our teachers and our staff are going to make sure they're doing what they need to do during school. But it's one bad behavior outside of school that can jeopardize your entire season. For example, if we have one student who decides and participates in what I would label an at-risk behavior of not wearing a mask and hanging out with the friends, a bunch of friends around a campfire with no mask on, and then they go and participate in a practice, you could essentially wipe out an entire sports team with one bad behavior. We can't control kids what they do outside of school. That's why they need to be part of the solution. If they want to come to school if they don't want an outbreak in their school, if they don't want their athletic team to be completely shut down and have to forfeit half of their season because 3/4 of the kids were exposed and have to quarantine, it is on the kids. We can only do what we can do when they're with us. We cannot control what they do out. And I understand and acknowledge not everybody believes that wearing a mask is something that should be done. And I'm not going to even talk about that. What I'm talking about is what I know what will happen if we bring that into our schools, or that into our athletic teams, or our bands, or our clubs. That's what's going to happen. Mr. Violi?
Yeah, Mike, I have just a question, go backwards a little bit in your comment about bus driver pulls up, there's kids at the bus stop, they don't have a mask. What are we doing?
We are going to have a limited supply of masks on every bus.
Okay.
We will issue that child a mask. That'll be their mask for the day, but that's also going to be, I don't want this framed as a discipline referral, but it's going to be a referral to the principal. The principal's going to follow up with that child, and they're going to follow up with the parents. And they're going to say, your kid didn't have a mask on. Well, I sent them to school with one. Well, then you need to figure it out, because they didn't have a mask on. The next time it could become a conduct referral. Kids have to be responsible for this too. And I know that sounds harsh, and I don't mean to be, well, I do need to be harsh. We've got to all take our responsibility with this.
Thank you.
I have a question about kind of going forward, the transportation, starting times, and traffic flow, all of that. Middle school and high school right now on the fact page are showing starting at the exact same time. I would anticipate parents who want to transport their children may have a middle schooler and a young high schooler. They can't possibly be in two buildings at the same time.
So that's a good point, and we've already started talking about that. The problem is the way we have, is it a three-tiered, or is it called a three-tiered or four-tiered bus system?
Well, it's basically two teams. One team does the high school, and that part of the other team does middle school and elementary.
So the issue is the way we have our routes structured is that we can't just change all these building times to allow for that. So the conversation today with my administrators is, again, we've always been taught to think, Tracy, if you walk through the door at 7:25 and you were supposed to be there at 7, what's going to happen? You're going to get a referral and a tardy. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to rethink that. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to loosen what we think about tardies, about getting to classes on time. We have to create legitimate reasons for that to happen. Now, obviously, we all know kids are going to try and take advantage of that, and that's going to unfortunately be the job of our building administrators to figure out the ones that are taking advantage and which ones aren't. But in the example you give, if I have a kid that I have to take and drop off at the middle school and then get to the high school and drop off, there are traffic flows. It's about a 7-minute drive between those two buildings. There's a chance that one of those two kids are going to be tardy. And then that's going to have to be something that we address and accept. The same with traffic flow within the buildings. There might be times where we teach our kids to be on time so that we can maximize instruction, especially at the high school and the middle school. You got to be on time to your class so you can maximize the 42 minutes that you have with the kid. We might have to rethink that, because we might find once we get everyone into school that getting everyone into a classroom within 3 minutes is not going to happen. So then we need to step back, we need to think about flow, and we need to rethink. I fully expect instructional time to shrink in this district because of all the things that we have to do. I fully expect that to happen. Our jobs are going to be to minimize the loss of instructional time at the same time of keeping kids safe and students and staff safe, period. But I was hoping they told us when this whole mess started, one of the things that we were told, don't worry, the Ohio Department of Education is going to create power standards. And they're going to take all these standards that every one of these teachers have to teach, and they're going to reduce them down to power standards. Guess what? That didn't happen. So right now we still have our standards. And we're going to do the best job we can to get them from A to Z in the time we have them.
So if the high school opens at X, for classes, start time is X, what time does the building open?
Well, right now, we've left our opening times and start times the same as last year.
I understand that, but what time can a child come into the building?
I don't have that information right now. I don't have that right at the top
There's
of my
got to
head.
be time before.
There is time built in,
the start
especially
time.
at the high school and the middle school, but I don't have those times with me
People
right now.
should be able to plan to get to two different buildings. If this one opens at 9 o'clock and the other one opens at 9 o'clock, one will be available to be into that building by 8:30.
Right. I talked to Mr. McCann. One of the suggestions that he had for me, he had an idea on how to take and create smaller groups of kids, the kids that are arriving by bus, kids that are arriving by parents, and kids that are driving, and separate those kids out, and then have them in holding areas, trying to keep them distant until the bell rings. So yes, there's going to be transition time. There's going to be a time. There already is time built in where kids are dropped off. I know here at the high school, kids are here sometimes 15, 20 minutes before the bell rings. Again, that's going to have to be addressed. We're going to have to probably try and tighten that up, but we're going to have to create some leeway, if you will, for parents to get from buildings to building.
With regard to that issue, would it be helpful to have a list of parents that are dropping off at both the high school and the middle school so that the principals at each school would know within reason if a kid is appears to be tardy and they're on that list that
Right.
maybe they were at the high school dropping off this morning and so the middle schooler is late, but just have a general list of parents who normally drop off at both the high school and the middle school.
And we usually do have that list, but the problem is that that list changes sometimes twice a day. But that is a great idea, and it's something that that I think that maybe we'll talk to the administrators about to see if there's some way that we can try and get a commitment from parents that are you committing without some exception to driving your kid every day or not, and we can try and do that. We pretty much know our ridership, but the reason I said that changes sometimes twice a day is that we'll have students that'll ride a bus consistently for 2 weeks, and then we'll have a student, that same student won't ride a bus for a week and a half, and then they'll get back on the bus and ride it again. And we try to address that, but it's easier at the elementaries. As you go up, it's more difficult because students sometimes hitch a ride with their friends or with their neighbor.
In this situation, it's different than in the past, because Rachel could have been one of those students that she would ride the bus and then maybe she would drive herself. But I think the reason that a parent might choose to drop them off at this building could be their considerations of not feeling like they want them on that bus. And so they might more consistently drive, and it just might be helpful to have a list.
That's a good idea. Thanks, Denise. Anyone else before I move on? All right, so arrival, departure, we've kind of talked about that, but again, another thing that we're looking at are designating entries and exits. This became less important. We're going to still try and do that, but this became less important with the announcement that as long as we keep kids moving with masks on, that's not as necessarily as critical. Hallways, we already talked about hallway flow. Again, actually, one of the teachers at DEFR, when we were in one of the focus groups, we were talking about, do you have specialists go into the classroom or you take the kids to the specialists? And I think the conversation was centering around having specialists go to the classrooms. And one of the teachers at DEFR said, Mike, but wait a second. At DEFR, we can actually, you give us time to clean our rooms and wipe everything down because we can actually take our kids and go out a wing and walk outside and get to all of our specials. And it's like, that's why we need building teams to do this, because that was a great idea. And she went on to say, then when they're gone, I can do a quick spray down the desk, get it all ready for them to come back. So that's why it's very important, and that's why you saw throughout the plan that on some of these specifics, they're going to have to drill down into specifics in each building because each building presents unique challenges, or you can frame it the other way. Some buildings have some advantages over the other advantages. And at DEFR, this teacher, I don't want to say her name because I didn't ask her if I could, but she had a great idea. She's like, we have these huge specials rooms that kids can be spaced out, and it gives the teachers a chance for a mask break, gives teachers a chance to wipe things down and just take a breath. And it gets the kids out of the room. It was a great idea. Would never have thought of that. So that was just one idea that was shared with me during when I dropped into one of the focus groups. Recess, again, this is going to be one of the ones that I think our younger kids are going to probably have to adjust to the most. We, at this time, are closing all playground equipment. The guidance that we're getting right now is that even with kids wearing masks on the playground, when you're on equipment, you're touching, you're climbing, and you're spreading germs. And so even if an elementary kid leaves the playground off the equipment, goes and re-sanitizes before they go in, there's been that monumental amount of exposure on that equipment. So at this time, we are closing all of our playground equipment, including playground equipment to surround care. Lucine's also been told that. And our elementary teams are going to have to come up with ways, activities, and they're going to have to think outside of the box on how to give kids breaks outside on their recesses, even preferably mask breaks at recess, keeping them distance without sharing lots of items. Some of the things that superintendents have talked about, instituting lots of hopscotch type areas, nature walks, taking walks around a certain area, letting kids take things out that are their own, not shared supplies, their own supplies, coloring, different things like that. But we're going to have to get creative with what we do with our kids at recess. And right now, we're going to close our playgrounds. Now, I will say that if Mr. McClellan and Mrs. Kravitz say to me, we came up with a plan that this class is going to use the playground equipment at this time, that's their day, and then we're going to have it sanitized, and an hour later, this class can come out and use it, and then we're going to sanitize it. If they can come up with a safe plan that I run by Portage County, and they give the thumbs up, then we'll do it. But right now, the statement is playgrounds are closed. It's not going to be a popular decision. I'm sure parents are probably sitting at home thinking right now, how are my kids not going to be able to play on playground equipment? Well, we can't figure out a way right now, and we're being advised against that. And you can see some of the ideas that they talked about. I already talked about meals and cafeteria. Athletics. So something big happened this week with athletics. Actually, a couple things big happened this week with athletics. One of the things that those of you who follow cross country was listed as a contact sport. And people were going crazy over that, although I would argue that if you've ever watched a invitational and 300 kids all taking off out of a box at the same time, there's a lot of contact. But we're actually looking now with our cross-country teams at maybe doing just dual meets instead of large invitationals. A lot of your schools are looking at dual meets, so then you're taking your varsity squad, which is usually 12 runners, and they're even tossing around ideas like staggered starts and things like that, but 12 runners and 12 runners is a lot better than 300 and 400 runners. But cross-country has been given non-contact sport status. That's huge because right now, the order in the state of Ohio, also the order in Portage County, but the order in the state of Ohio currently is that contact sports of soccer and football are only allowed to inter-squad scrimmage. They can keep competing, but they have not been given the go-ahead to do any scrimmaging or competitions outside of their own teams. That's huge. Volleyball has been given the go-ahead for scrimmages. There's a set number. Golf is in full, I was going to say swing, that's a little, golf is in full swing, and I also say it. And cross-country, the kids are practicing. We don't have a tennis team, but if we had a girls' tennis team, girls' tennis would be playing right now. Those are all the non-contact sports. Mr. TV, Paul, and I talked about it, and we've asked our volleyball program to not participate in scrimmages and maybe only do one prior to the season. I think the OHA said, I apologize, I don't have this right on top of my head, I think it was 5 that they were allowed to have, but we've asked them to just do one. Because why do you want to take a chance of exposing your kids and ending a season over a practice game? Again, we're having to change the way we think about things. Something that is a little difficult to overcome right now, Portage County, Summit County, and this region have deemed contact sports. They have said that they're suggesting that no contact sports begin their season before October 1st. I'm a part of the Metro League superintendents. We've met 3 times. We're meeting again tomorrow. And we're debating, do we follow that order? Because a lot of them are in Summit, a few of us are in Portage. Or do we ignore that order and initiate our seasons as Governor DeWine has to lift the order to allow things to happen. The OHSA is saying that contact sports can move forward, soccer and football, as soon as the order is lifted. So they're planning on the start of the season right now. But the Cuyahoga County Board of Health has said that they don't recommend any contact sports, period. Cancel their seasons. So a lot of those school districts in the Cuyahoga County area did that, and then something interesting happened today. 3 actually reversed those decisions. And they're actually, they're going to consider, and they're going to wait on the OHSA and the governor to say move forward. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next 3 weeks what happens. The decision that our league's going to be confronted with, that if the governor gives the go-ahead for contact sports to move forward with their regular season, so right about that 3rd week of August, we're in Portage County and Summit County, and I think we play Geauga County schools, if they have advice or guidance, they're not orders to not play until October 1st, we're going to have to make decisions. Are we going to follow that guidance, or are we going to follow the governor's office and the OHSAA? I don't have that answer for you. We're talking about it. We want to make a decision as a league, all the teams in the Metro League, and stay united. However, I'm telling you that I'm going to make the decision that I think is best for Streetsboro. I'm hoping that it aligns with what my colleagues in the Metro League, decide to do, but we've not made that decision yet. We don't have enough data, and every other day it changes. And we hear about it at 2 o'clock when everyone else hears about it. Are there questions on athletics?
I would just advise you, I mean, my opinion, that if they advise against it, but the Metro League decides to do it, I don't know that, as much as I love football, that that's the time to thumb our nose at the advice of the health department. If maybe we could find a better time to do that, when we're trying to educate kids instead of getting sports off.
Well, and that's a big part of the question.
You know what I mean?
And that's
Like,
what we're all
if they're saying not to, like,
that's what
we're
we're all
doing it all
struggling with.
along, and now we say, sorry, we like football too much.
Mr. Gibson, every superintendent in the state of Ohio is struggling with that question, because if I said right now, if I made a decision that we weren't going to have sports, I don't know that I'd make it out to my car. But if I made a decision that we are going to have sports and one kid comes down with COVID, I won't make it out to my car. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the best decision we can with the data we have when the time for that decision comes. Right now, we don't, fortunately, right now on whatever the date is today, August 6th, I don't have to make that decision. So here's what I will say to you is that we're going to take the advice that's given to us from all the entities, because we have the governor's office telling us one thing. We have the OHSA telling us one thing. We have the Ohio Department of Health saying, we want you to do this, but then listen to your local health department. And then we have our local health department telling us something different. So right now, we're trying to juggle all of that, and then we've got the Cleveland Clinic chirping in our ear, we've got Akron Children's Hospital chirping in our ear, we've got the American Academy of Pediatrics chirping in our ear, and so we're juggling all of this. So we will make the decision that we feel is best for our kids, and it's undoubtedly going to be a tough decision, and more than likely will not be a popular decision in the end, but I don't know that. But as of August 6th, I don't have that answer. Those are all the factors we're dealing with right now.
I think it's really important that, I think we all understand that there's going to be no right decision. There won't be the right decision for every single family or every single person. We have to look at safety first, of course. What I think is very important is that we focus on what's happening in Portage County. Understanding with sports, we may play children in other counties, but really dialing into what's going on in Portage County. And our numbers have stayed, knock on wood, thank goodness, relatively low. Now, that doesn't discount those that have had it or who have unfortunately succumbed to it, and that doesn't take that away. But I think it's super important that we focus on what's happening here.
I agree. And then one other quick point, not to belabor athletics, the current order that's in place right now, and we thought that was going to be lifted today, but Governor DeWine was supposed to meet with President Trump today and pushed his presser to tomorrow, but then we all found out that Governor DeWine has COVID today. So we'll see what happens with his presser for tomorrow. But one of the things that we were told, and again, we've been told stuff and then it doesn't happen, but one of the things that we were told was that they might lift the testing requirement, because currently for contact sports, the current order in the state of Ohio states that anyone participating in a contact sport must be COVID tested 72 hours before they go away to a meet, not at home, away to a meet, a contest. And that's everyone on the team, a statistician, a water boy, every person that travels with that team. So to give you an example of what that is, that's $150 per person right now, okay? So when you look at just football for our season, it'd be roughly $10,000 to $15,000 for our away games to test all of our kids. Now, let's look at soccer. We would be testing potentially our soccer players on a day they're playing a game home to go to a game 2 days from now, and then when they go to the game 2 days ago, we might be swabbing them again to go to another game 2 days from now. You can see where the money starts adding up. I don't remember what district Randy said, but one of the districts did the calculations similar size to ours. They were looking at almost $500,000 for just fall sports and COVID testing for contact sports.
Which is the same amount of money that we had taken from our budget this year again.
Correct.
Oh, snap.
So, and the tricky part of all that is if we did have the money and the insurance companies did cover it, which they don't, there aren't tests available. I know somebody who thinks their child could possibly have COVID, and they've tested this child for strep, they've tested this child for mono, they've tested this child for everything they can think to test of, and so then the parents are saying, what about a COVID test? And guess what the answer is? Well, we can't get one. So the testing right now, and the governor even talked about that, our supplies are low. They're hoping that they beef those back up. I just read something today that stated that the state of Ohio was on the verge of accepting or signing a contract for the rapid testing, which is like a 90-minute test. So that could be a positive because those seem to be a little more available than the ones that are the more expensive ones. They're supposed to be a little bit better quality. They take a little more time. So athletics, we are in phase 3 of athletics. I wanted to talk about that just quickly. Phase 3 of our athletic plan, it mirrors the state of Ohio. Randy was actually on the state board that helped develop the 3 phases. So you are going to see kids practicing without masks. When they're not in their drills, they should be 5 or 6 feet apart with masks on. Coaches are all supposed to have masks on. That's phase 3, and we're waiting for the contact order to be listed. But that phase 3 goes with all athletics. So when they're not in their drill or practicing what they practice, they should have a mask on and they should not be congregating less than 6 feet. We've had some challenges with that because, again, you're changing the way they've always thought and done things. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but I would say our coaches are doing a nice job. And we also are temperature checking all of our athletes. Cleaning and disinfecting, I already talked a little bit about that, but one thing I did want to say is that I'm excited to say that we were able to purchase 3 Clorox 360 machines. These machines actually can walk into a room and fog a room in under 10 minutes and make it completely sanitized. They were very expensive. We've purchased 3 for the district. We are also very fortunate with the contract that we have with Damon Chemical that we have been able to, they gave us free of charge hand sanitizing stations that we have everywhere in every building, and we're still putting up more. What's important about those hand sanitizing stations is, and actually I didn't know this, but a parent emailed me the other day and said, my child is allergic to alcohol. How are you going to guarantee that they're safe? I talked to Randy. He said, that's easy. All of the hand sanitizing stations that we have all around the buildings, the ones that we mounted, are alcohol-free. Our supplier said, no problem with us getting our supplies. We've got a significant stockpile, and we're not going to have any problems getting the Nutristat, the hand sanitizer, and all the cleaning agents for the rooms. One other thing about cleaning and disinfecting, all of our drinking fountains are going to be closed. And we actually were able today to identify and put a purchase rec in. We are changing all of our drinking fountains in the hallways out to water bottle stations, and that should be done within the next 2 weeks. So we will have water bottle stations in every building at every what used to be drinking fountains. The drinking fountain portion is going to stay, but we're going to turn it off, and it'll have water bottle stations. We were excited about that. So we've got that order placed. They'll be in, and we're hoping that our maintenance team can do the majority of that work. If not, we've got some contingency plans for filling water until those are completely installed. But what we thought was going to be a huge amount of money is not, and fortunately we can take that out of PI dollars because that's something that can last for more than 5 years. So that will come out of PI dollars, not general fund dollars. So that's breaking news today. That's the first time really anyone's heard it except Randy and CJ. CJ knew about it because he said we could spend the money. So we are putting the water bottle fillers in. We are going to do deep cleaning in every building every night. At this time, I've not made a final decision, but I'm going to ask the board to consider closing all of our buildings to outside activities except the annex. Then we'll try and come up with a plan or a rotation that we can get if there are still a lot of your youth teams have canceled their seasons already, but there are some clubs, there are some groups out there that still work their kids out. But at this time, we don't know how, with the staff that we have, how we can allow groups in buildings until 10 o'clock at night and then be able to adequately get those buildings cleaned with the staff we have and get them ready for school the next day. So we've not made a final decision on that, but that, again, is going to be something I know was a hot button topic for a long time. We opened up our facilities, and only because of COVID, we were considering closing our facilities down, but we're thinking maybe that swing building can be the annex. And then try to come up with a way to when whatever groups are using them, share a cost of getting it sanitized and cleaned so that it's ready then to be used by those groups again the next day. It's not going to be a popular topic. I understand that. We were hoping that we could be able to use we were hoping that COVID would be gone, but we're not. It's the reality of the situation. So we're not saying it yet. Absent any idea that could get our buildings clean with the existing staff that we have and safe for kids to enter back in the next day, that's going to probably be the recommendation to all of you in August. Okay.
I agree with
Symptoms, these are all taken, I'm not going to read for you symptoms. Everyone knows the symptoms, and everyone knows the symptoms change, and they can be different in everyone. But what I am going to say is that I'm going to continue to say is that we're going to expect our parents to take the temperature and assess their kids every day. We do not have the capacity nor the building configurations to mass test kids every day to take their temperature. There are units that you would see if you go to Akron Children's Hospital. Maplewood did purchase some units that actually can do like 40 to 50 people at a time. As you walk through, it takes a picture of the face, and then we'll give a high temperature alert. If someone is above that threshold, whatever you set, sends a text message to the administrator, shows them the picture of the person that had the high temperature, then hopefully they can identify who that is. It's one of their students. They can go get them. Those machines are upwards of $30,000 each. Are also not very easily attained and available. We have ordered over 100 digital thermometers, and we may order a second lot of 100. We are considering ways to then maybe distribute those out so that if a staff member or teacher, CJ walks in the room, he's sweating, he doesn't look like he feels good, you can do just a quick boop and see if he has a fever. He does. Straight to the clinic, go. We worked with Akron Children's Hospital. We walked all of our buildings. Mrs. Devers and Student Services walked all of the buildings. We've created, we have 2 clinics basically now in every building. We have an isolation room for students or staff that we suspect are sick or possibly COVID positive, because we don't know until they have a test, so we can only look and identify symptoms. Symptoms of COVID-19 are also symptoms of strep throat, or also symptoms of a virus, or also symptoms of a cold, or someone that has seasonal allergies that have a sinus infection. So we're creating areas where kids can go if they have to get their medication, or if they just have an ouchie from the playground. And then we're creating an area that's housed by Akron Children's Hospital staff that will be then for those kids that we suspect are ill. We don't know what that illness is. It would be presumptuous to think that just because someone has a fever, or they're sweating, or they're coughing, it would be completely irresponsible and presumptuous to think that they automatically have COVID. But we are going to treat them and isolate them differently until a caregiver can come and get them. So we've worked hard on that. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Akron Children's Hospital. They've been working hard on that. You're going to see some changes in the clinics. So we've talked a lot about, I know one of the big fears out there is that, what if you're exposed? Somebody comes to class, we sit all day, and we have Mike in class all day. He goes home and he tests COVID positive. Do you have to send the whole class home and quarantine the entire building? The answer is no. And we've been told no over and over again. And you go back to the definition that I talked to about exposure. And so what they're going to do is you talk about quarantine and isolation, and I would encourage everyone to read this section in our restart plan, because this is important about the process that's going to happen. But if I'm identified, if I go to a doctor and the doctor tells me, Mike, you have COVID-19, I have to quarantine. Anyone in my immediate family that spent any time with me has to isolate. Anyone in my immediate family that went to school or to work, those people are not considered exposed. Because if you remember, exposure is defined as no mask, less than 6 feet, more than 10 minutes. So that's what people need to remember. There's a difference between quarantine, isolation, and exposure. So if you have a mom or a dad or a sibling or a kid that comes home, they ultimately test COVID positive, your family will be in isolation for 14 days. The person that was diagnosed is in quarantine for 14 days until they show no symptoms. And then the Portage County Health Department, who is our health district, they initiate all those processes. They initiate the testing. They initiate the contact tracing, and they initiate then the return to school. We don't do that. We don't determine that. There are HIPAA reasons. If Tracy comes in contact with somebody and she has to quarantine or isolate, I can't tell the world that she did. It's against the law. Now, the health department will inform the superintendent of those who have tested positive and what's happening, but that's being driven by our local health department, and those rules are passed down by our local health department. I would encourage everyone to read that. I'm not going to read through every single one of these. We talk about close contact. We talk about direct contact. But all these procedures are what Joe DiOrio and the Portage County Health Department gave to us, and we had to incorporate into our plans. Now, section 3, the part that a lot of people, I probably seen more confusion on this about on Facebook than I've seen and out there in questions I've had than anything. I want to make it very clear to everyone that's listening. We're going to do a video on this tomorrow. The Board of Education tonight is not approving whether you were going to be hybrid. You're not approving whether we're going to come back in full person. You're not approving whether we're going to go all digital. The Board of Education is approving a restart plan that has us separated into 3 levels. A full start based on the county color designation system, a hybrid, or a full digital. Now, one thing I want to say right now is that the color designation for the county is not going to automatically decide what we do. It's going to be a factor, a data point in what we do, because local factors can change this plan at any time. But what I will say is that we're not going to willy-nilly jump from hybrid to traditional to digital back to hybrid. We can't do that. That's too disruptive to the educational process. So our goal is always going to be in the least restrictive model. And I know that's a special education term, but it's relevant. Our goal is going to always to be in the least restrictive instructional model. So our goal right now, Portage County and most of the state of Ohio are gold. More trended to gold today, but less went from, many of them, a lot of places went from red to gold. But gold, as you read it, is defined as moderate spread, I believe. So if we are yellow or gold, we are in 5 days a week with the measures that we've already talked about. If our county or local conditions push us if we go to red in the county, we will go to a hybrid schedule. We've created an A-B schedule with half the kids on Monday and Tuesday, a digital day Wednesday for all, half the kids Thursday, Friday. Now, we could get pushed into a hybrid model even if we are yellow or gold. That says orange on there, and I need to change that because I think they changed it from orange, now it's gold. But anyway, regardless. If I launch into our attendance program and I see when we run our attendance numbers in the morning that we see 75 kids out in the building and 25 staff members out in the building, we're going to drill down into that. And that could identify the possibility of an outbreak in a building. We have to look at that data, and that could, because our district is still small enough that we have lots of families that are in one or more of the buildings, or 2 or more of the buildings. Right now, if we have an outbreak that forces us to go to a digital model, we're going to do that as a district. We're not going to have one building digital, another building hybrid, another building in every day. We're going to stay consistent as a district, and we're going to try and stay with the county color system, but there are factors that could change that. Student attendance. If we all of a sudden have a case where, God forbid, out of the 21 drivers, 15 of them are down ill. Well, our choices are to say, parents, sorry, no buses, get your kids to school on your own, or we may have to call a calamity day, or a digital day, or we may have to move our entire district to a digital model. So these are all the factors that we're going to have to consider, but what we're not going to do, because I can't tell you how many questions I had sent to me via email that says, so what you're telling me is if DeWine says on Thursday that we're orange, and the next Thursday says we're red, the next Thursday says we're purple, and the next Thursday we're orange, you're going to flip-flop back in between models. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to use natural breaks. So once we get to a model, we're going to stay in that model with the goal to go back to the least restrictive model at a natural break. What's a natural break? Natural breaks are like maybe a Thanksgiving recess would be a natural break where we could give 3 or 4 or 5 days for people to transition back to that least restrictive model. It could more likely be a 9 weeks. So let's say we get in and whatever happens and we have to go to a hybrid model. We would probably stay in that hybrid model for 9 weeks. And as we're tracking toward the end of that 9 weeks, we would evaluate, do we need to stay in a hybrid model? Do we need to go all digital? Or can we bring our kids back, which is the least restrictive and best educational, into our classes? But what we're not going to do is just jump around. We're going to create natural breaks, so it could be a Christmas break, it could be a 9-week break, it could be whatever, some sort of weekend where we have a Friday, Monday off. We'll evaluate that, but what we don't want to do is disrupt the educational process, because the people sitting out in the audience right now will tell you that they made the transition from in-face overnight to digital, and it was tough. But if I had then called them a week later and said, well, half of your kids are going to come, for half the week, and the other half of the kids are, then they might have to start all over again. And then I call them a week later and say, oh no, we're all coming back. And then they all come back. That changes everything they do instructionally. So we're not going to do that to our students, but we're not going to do that to our staff either. So we're going to do natural breaks. Questions about the 3 different models that I presented and how we move between them. Brian?
Yeah, you mentioned that the color coding on the Portage, or the Portage County map is not going to designate, right?
It's a guide,
It's a guide.
but it won't necessarily automatically designate.
But and I'm looking at the plan here, the Plan B, remote hybrid plan, Portage County designation red. But down in the bottom, it says hybrid instruction could be used at any time regardless of the color designation.
Correct.
But what it doesn't say is we could be the opposite of that as well. Because what if the conditions in Streetsboro are different than what the rest of the county is? Shouldn't we have that ability to be able to do what we're doing?
The problem with that, to answer your question, the problem is that the data that I receive from the Portage County Health Department is not specific to the city of Streetsboro. I am not getting a call every Thursday and saying there are 12 kids, 12 families that have COVID-19 in the city of Streetsboro. I am not privy to that information.
But if you go back up into DeWine's plan, where it says risk levels, red is the designation, and it says follow guidance of this plan, in-person or hybrid learning. We should know, I would think we should know what the condition is in our buildings to some degree. We may not know the specifics, but we should know if there is an outbreak in our buildings. So, I mean, I would think if the county's red, but the conditions in Streetsboro are not adding up to being red, we shouldn't be going back to a hybrid learning and disrupting all of the plans that we have made.
Our goal is going to be to have every kid in school every day as long as we can. And it's going to be based on the data that we have. I don't disagree with you, Brian, but right now I do disagree in the sense that we don't know. If they take Portage County and make it the red, I don't have the data to say that Streetsboro is fine. I also don't have the data to know what parents are driving into Cuyahoga County, what parents are driving into Geauga County, what parents are driving to Stark County who might be red.
I just think it pigeonholes
So that's
you.
why
It will pigeonhole you into going hybrid if the county goes to red. And we're barely over an indicator.
Well, I don't know of any other way to do this. And this is what virtually every school district in the state of Ohio has done. Because we just don't have data specific to every person in the city of Streetsboro.
I don't know that data specific to the city really
I can't hear,
matters.
can you speak in?
I said, I don't know that data specific to the city really matters. I mean, where do you live at? You know what I mean? You're not in the city. I drive to Solon every day. Brian, do you drive to Bedford every day?
I was in
we're
5 different counties today.
There you go. So, I mean, so Streetsboro may have 0 cases, but I bet you majority of these people in the audience aren't staying in Streetsboro all day tomorrow. They're all going to go somewhere else, and then they're all going to come back. And I think that if we try to get too narrow with this, it's not going to work. I would even say that maybe going by what the county says is, you know what I mean, is not accurate enough. You know what I mean? Just because so many people don't stay within the county.
Well, like I
Because
said,
we're right in the corner. Everyone's, you know what I mean, 2 minutes, you're in 3 different counties.
I'm just going to say, I don't disagree with, if we have an outbreak in Streetsboro, that we should do something different than what the county's doing.
correct.
I just don't think that we should not be able to go the opposite direction.
Well, but that's why I've said consistently throughout this plan, and I've said verbally tonight, that the color designation is not going to necessarily drive exactly what we do. We're going to take local conditions and make that part of our decisions. But we're also not going to just jump back and forth from plans either.
I have a comment to make. My concern about hybrid is if we start 5 days a week and the color changes and we decide to go hybrid, the intent is to limit interaction and exposure, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And everything that we do,
you're
limit
taking half the numbers
exposure.
out.
Right. If we go from a traditional to a hybrid, we've got some kids in school 2 days a week. The other 3 days, they're going to be at a daycare, they're going to be at a friend's house, they're going to be learning somewhere else, and then bringing whatever they've been exposed to back into our buildings. The hybrid concerns me greatly because of that exact reason. If we have them in the building 5 days a week, They're exposed to the same kids in the classroom, the same teachers. We go to a hybrid. People have to work. I mean, from a purely HR standpoint, as an employer, it's impossible. And again, I agree with Brian. Our situation in Streetsboro City Schools, we have an outbreak or we have a high number of cases, game changer. We're digital, that's the end of it. We're still not going to keep kids in classrooms if that happens. I would think we wouldn't.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with anything you
Yeah.
said, but again, I guess I'm going to default back to we've developed these plans, districts, with the data that we have from the experts that we were told to follow, and absent anything else, this is what I've come up with that mirrors probably better than 90%, maybe even more of that of the districts around the state of Ohio. Some form of this. Any other questions about the three-phased approach?
So what's our decision-making process? Just so I understand how we go through it. So tomorrow, we're in school, right? We've been in school for a few weeks, whatever. Tomorrow, you get a call from the health director, hey, listen, we moved up to red. What do we do? Is that just going to be on you? You're going to look at, well, I haven't had any sick kids in the school. Are you going to call us?
I'm going to need to look at our district data, and I'm going to have to make a decision. That's what my job is to do. And so I'll make the decision based on the data that I have. I believe that once school gets into session, I believe that this decision about whether to be digital, hybrid, or in person, once you hit red, will be taken out of our hands. But that hasn't happened yet. I believe that when a county hits red, they're going to be advised by their health departments to go all digital. But we don't have that. They did that already in Cuyahoga County, and that's why you see all of your Cuyahoga County schools, almost all of them now, have declared their digital to start the year. Because Cuyahoga County has consistently stayed in red, and those numbers are not going down. Cuyahoga County is red. Most of them, watch it. The ones that I've got all the data back in my office that shows that the lion's share of Cuyahoga County schools are full digital. So I believe that Portage County will look at me and say, you're red. Our advice to you, Portage County schools, is to go all digital.
In a perfect world, if Portage County went red, it would be nice to have the county take a look at the zip code information that they get from the Ohio Department of Health and say, look, things are pretty good in Streetsboro, it's just the rest of the county's having an issue. Go ahead and stay open, or whatever. But I honestly don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be county, and they're going to recommend, just like Cuyahoga County, just like you said, they're going to recommend that we close, and we have to follow that. I think we would have to follow that advice at some point.
Other questions?
But is Portage County Health Department recommending that if we are in a red status that we should close?
We've not been in a red status, so he hasn't said that.
Is that one of their guidelines right now?
He's not said that. All he has said right now, he told us 2 weeks ago that we were going to be red, and he told us to be prepared to go digital. That's as far as we've gotten as Portage County superintendents from our health department.
Yeah, there's 7 indicators that turn us red, and for the last 3 weeks, we've only hit 2 of them.
Well,
that makes no sense.
According to, and I'm not going to debate
Oh, I know,
that. I'm not going to
just saying,
debate
it
that,
doesn't
but
make
according to
sense.
Joe DiOrio 2 or 3 weeks ago when he was in our superintendent's meeting, he thought that we were going to hit, out of the 7 indicators, we were going to hit 6 of the 7 indicators. I don't know if we did or we didn't. I just look at the colors because
we haven't.
it seems to me that it changes all the time, so.
Yeah.
So then currently, parents should plan to, first day of school, we're in session, we're in the building.
Right now, August 6th, we are a county designation of gold or orange, and that would designate that unless local conditions change or we get an order from the governor, we are in school 5 days a week.
Okay.
So logistically, we have an 8/1 start or 9/1 start date.
September 1st for students, August 14th for staff.
So logistically, all of the things that we've talked about tonight that have to happen, can we realistically do that successfully by
Yes.
September 1st?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to move on unless. So then finally, our Rocket Digital Academy, we've made this option. We've asked that you guys pass a moratorium on tuition for the Rocket Digital Academy and not charge our parents this year for the Rocket Digital Academy. When we talk about that later under superintendent's recommendations, I do have some data to share with you that's pretty relevant to this discussion, but we really felt like the impact of the virus, COVID-19, has been tremendous on a lot of our families. A lot of our families that I personally know of have one or two parents that have lost jobs, and they also don't feel comfortable sending their kids to school, so we do want to make this option free. I've talked to each one of you individually, and I have a good sense that you'll support that, but we'll take a vote on that later. We did do some commitment forms. We gave until August 10th for a final commitment with some conditions to that, and I'll go through that in a minute. And I do have that data to share on what that's going to cost us. It is going to be a significant cost. We did receive some additional care funding money, a small amount. I don't remember exactly what that was, to help kind of offset those costs. What I'm hoping is as this pandemic obviously is not going away, I'm hoping that we will continue to receive some federal assistance that can be used to offset costs from the pandemic. So it's my hope that we can, if we get some more of that assistance, that we can use that to offset some of the costs of our students that have chosen to do Rocket Digital. We have asked for parents to make a semester commitment because it is very expensive in the Ohio online learning community that we've been partners with for over 6 years. They require a semester commitment. One of the big questions that have been asked is about AP offerings. The Ohio online community does allow for AP, but they do not allow our teachers to teach it. That's part of their agreement. And we have signed an agreement with our union that we want our teachers teaching the kids that are in the Rocket Digital Academy. They have first right of refusal. So unfortunately, students that want to leverage AP classes and attend the Rocket Digital Academy, we may have to try and work something out, but that's going to be a conversation that I'm going to have with the union to see if something can be worked out. But at this time, AP classes, if you choose Rocket Digital Academy 100% of the time, you cannot attend AP classes at this time. That was one of those questions that was asked quite a bit. Our teachers, we have quite a few teachers over the last 6 years that have taught our kids. It's part of their negotiated agreement. That was on purpose because we think our teachers should be teaching our kids, not other teachers. So that's part of the agreement we have with our teachers union, and we are not going to go away from that agreement. So unfortunately, this does affect a few people. Some people have been upset with me, but at this time, we will not be able to offer AP to students to participate in Rocket Digital Academy. So that is the presentation on our restart plan. It's been mailed out to all parents. It's been mailed out to all staff. It's been available on our website for more than 3 weeks. There have been some moderate changes made to it. I am considering leaving the word draft on the bottom of it, but every time there's a change made, I'm going to change the date on it because I feel like that this is a fluid document and it's subject to change. Sadly, every time the governor comes on TV at 2 o'clock on whatever days he talks, it can change our plan. So I'm going to leave the word draft on it only because I want people to realize that this could change at any time. So now that I'm done with this, I'll head back over to my seat, but this is what we're going to vote on, the plan as presented.
But are we voting on a draft?
You're voting on this as a plan. This is the restart plan. I'm leaving the word draft on it because it's likely to change several times between now and when we end the school year.
So if it changes again, do we need board approval? on
No,
it
I
again?
don't think that I think the reason, I want you to vote on this knowing that it's a fluid document. I would think that if something major were to happen, and I don't know what that is, that would require board action, then we would need to have board action. And technically, boards of education don't have to approve this. It's just a protocol of good practice of what superintendents are trying to do. This is not a document that has to be approved. As long as we're meeting our instructional hours and we are instructing students the way our Board of Education has allowed it to be instructed with a blended learning policy, which we have in place now, this actually does not have to be board approved. I thought it was good practice and most superintendents are doing that. There are some superintendents that are not board approving their restart plans.
I understand what you just said, but I mean, maybe it's just mincing words, but to me, draft suggests something that's not finalized. And as far as we know, this is the final plan until it's changed. So I would take draft off.
That's fine.
And then if something should change, at the bottom where you have draft, you should just have a revision date.
I think that's actually a good idea. Use the word revised instead of draft.
Yeah, because I would prefer that it not
No, that's a
be
very,
approved in draft
that's a very good point.
form.
You can see I'm not an English teacher. That's a good point, Denise. So I think rather than using the word draft, I'll say adopted. And then if we do a revision,
Just
we'll
have the
put
revision
revision
dates.
and the date, and then we can send out a blast call, email, use all of our systems, say, hey, this was changed, here's the section that was changed. That's a good idea. Anyone else before I head back over?
I just want to just say, the only point that I have is the point that I made about the red, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with leaving that where we're pigeonholed into closing if the county status is showing red.
But I don't believe that we are. I've tried to say that we are going to use the county designations as a guide.
But it says that in the plan, if it's red, we go to hybrid.
But I think at the top, doesn't it say that that not one color is going to automatically push us into a certain thing, that we're going to use local conditions to make the decision?
But it kind of does, but it says it one way, not the opposite way. I would just ask that provision is in there.
So,
You know.
so we don't have to pass this tonight.
it literally
But I
says
think our
this in
community
there.
wants us to pass it tonight,
Am
but here,
I incorrect?
I'm going to read right from it.
I read
The
it how
color
you are.
designation will not automatically initiate movement from one model to another. That's literally written in there.
It's in there?
Yes.
Where?
That's all the way at the top.
right under Section 3, Streetsboro City Schools Instructional Plan. But Brian, if the board wants me to try and figure out a different way to say that and pass this plan tonight and then run it by you wordsmithing, I can do that. But I feel like our community needs to see that this is our plan.
If that's what it says in there, I'm good.
It is.
It does say that. It's vague. And maybe part of it's had to be vague, but a lot of it's vague. How are we going to switch models? Well, we'll look at this and we'll look at that and we'll adjust
There-
this.
there are too
What's
many
gonna happen?
factors.
What's going to happen in the buildings? Well, I'm going to let them figure it out. We're going to try something.
I'm good.
We've got to.
Sorry.
We literally have a draft plan. It's not, it's lacking in detail in a lot of places. A lot of places that make a big difference, where I'm concerned about sending my kid to school. And what I want to know is, will he be safe? And the only thing we've definitely said is, they're all going to ride the bus together, and that's it. What are they going to do in the classrooms? We're not sure. Lunch? We don't know. Recess? I don't know. How are they going to get past each other? How are they going to get dropped off? We don't know any of that.
And I told you that we have building
But
teams
that's
working
what
on
parents
that.
are, that's what people want to know. That's what people are going to say, is it safe for my kid to be there? I know in last year, he had little Johnny in his class who likes to wipe his nose and everything. You know what I mean? So he knows that kid's around. Is he going to be close to that kid? Is he going to have to be near that kid? Is he behind, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of detail we're leaving out of this.
I think
And maybe if we can't have it narrowed down yet, then we can't, but then maybe let's pull this back and wait till we can narrow it down some more.
I think people would be more comfortable, myself included, to have, I know that you mentioned doing town hall videos, having, as we're making progress, I think 3 weeks, honestly, I don't know how we're going to successfully be ready, honestly. And when I look at how much needs to happen and, leaving it on the buildings to make those decisions and figure them out, which those are the best people to make the decisions because they know the logistics of their buildings. But my concern is, how are we going to communicate to people who do have those concerns? Is my kid going to be in their classroom? How are they going to keep their mask on and have lunch if they're 3 feet from each other? Yada, yada, whatever. The only way that we can alleviate fear from anyone, parents or students, and staff, is to feed it good information. So how can we do that? Can we have a live town hall? 2 of them, once a week over the next 3 weeks. People can ask questions. We can collect questions. I'd like to see more interaction as opposed to just a fact page to do that. Just something to think about. And I'm not a huge fan of the hybrid. I really struggle with where these kids are going to be on the 3 days that they're not in the buildings. And again, if the intention is to limit contact, they could be out of no fault of their own with a sitter. I just don't like the hybrid option.
Well, I appreciate all the comments that all of you made, but I'm going to tell you that we did the best job we could on this plan. And this plan mirrors what 90% of your school districts are doing and drilling down into details that are building specific, and that's what we're working on. So,
And I would just say with regard to the hybrid plan, I'm not sure what's the difference between those 3 days of the week and the weekend. We don't know where they are on the weekend either.
Then you got 5 days of not
Yeah,
knowing where they are.
but that's the same issue that you're bringing up with the hybrid plan.
Sure.
We don't have control over where these kids are at night
True.
after they leave school, nor
True.
do we have control over where they are on the weekend. So the hybrid plan, as, you know, Mr. Dalba has pointed out, this framework has been adopted by 90% of the schools. I mean, this is a unique, obviously, time in our history.
Absolutely.
We can't account for everything, and I fear, as I hear that discussion down there, that we're not going to make a decision because we haven't accounted for every possible outcome, and there's no guarantee that we will ever be able to do that. This is a framework that we need to start with, and as more information is gathered, it can be revised. Getting information out in a manner that is accessible to parents is a good idea. And we can work on how to do that and create that conversation. But we have, as Mr. Dalbaugh said, the plan doesn't necessarily need to be adopted by a board, but I think we need to move forward now in some way. And then as we gather more information, we can revise the plan. As those steps are set by the building administrators and Mr. Dalbaugh, we can pass that, get that information out to parents. But I think we're kind of going down a what-if rabbit hole when we're never going to have every piece of information because it just doesn't exist at this point.
Well, and I manage 6 facilities globally from an HR perspective, their safety. I understand that. My concern is I just want to make sure, because we've not had a working meeting to discuss anything, to make sure that my questions and my concerns are brought to the attention and dealt with appropriately. That's all.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll head back to my seat, and then I'll read the recommendation.
Thank you, Mike. And while you're doing that, you had mentioned at the beginning that there was over 100 staff members that were involved with focus groups and so forth. And I'm not going to call them out tonight, but if you're here and if you're watching at home or listening to this later, if you were involved in that, thank you very much, because I know a lot of you were involved in that in your time off on the over the summer, and you weren't required to do it, but you are dedicated to the point that you took part in that so that we could have a good of a restart plan as we possibly can have at this moment in time. Mike?
And Mr. President, I apologize. I guess the discussion did occur out of order, and I apologize for that. That's my fault, not the board's fault.
That's right.
So I'm going to read the recommendation. Item A, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the restart plan for the 2021 school year as shown in the attachment.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
No.
Mr. Gibson?
No.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes. Could you confirm for me that vote, please, the numbers?
Mrs. Baba, yes. Mrs. Campbell, no. Mr. Gibson, no. Mr. Grimm, yes. Mr. Violi, yes.
Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. Item B, is this on? It's recommended the Board of Education hire Ashley Gert as assistant principal at Streetsboro Elementary School on a 204 days at a salary of $76,500 plus other administrative benefits effective August 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2022.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to welcome Ashley to the administrative team. Ashley spent her entire career in Streetsboro. I believe she was also a Streetsboro graduate. One of the things that this board has talked to me about is trying to find folks that have said they want to be a rocket for their career. Ashley has no desire to go anywhere else. She's stayed here her entire career. She started here as a student teacher. She also then became a title teacher and then a second and third grade teacher here in the district. And now she's our assistant principal at Streetsboro Elementary School. We're excited to have Ashley on the team. She's excited to hit the ground running. She most recently served as our literacy coach at Streetsboro Elementary School, leading the literacy initiative that we have going on that all of you know about. So again, I would like to welcome Ashley Gert.
Good to see a homegrown.
I don't assume she's here, right? I can't tell. Everybody's got a mask on. Okay. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, motion carries.
Item C, it is recommended the Board of Education hire Michelle Kravitz as interim principal at Henry Duffer Intermediate School, 204 days at a salary of $82,000 plus other administrative benefits, effective August 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2021.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Like Ashley, Michelle has spent her entire career here in Streetsboro, and again, in our discussions with Michelle, she's super excited to take the reins at Duffer Intermediate School. She has her lifelong, I don't know if it's been her lifelong goal, but her recent goal has been to become a principal. We were super impressed with her during her interview process. We believe that this is a great fit. She knows the staff. From an instructional standpoint, she's taught at Duffer, and now she's at the middle school, so she knows where kids need to be when they're at Duffer and where they need to go when they leave Duffer. I'm super excited about welcoming Michelle to the team. And she, again, is another person that said to me, Mike, I want to be in Streetsboro. I want to be part of what happens for the rest of my career. So I would like to welcome Michelle Kravitz as our interim principal at Duffer Intermediate School.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations.
Item D, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the addendum to Technology Coordinator Transportation Director's contract as shown in the attachment.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Discussion?
Yes, so this is an addendum to Andreas's contract to also then make him in charge of basically operations. He will be in charge of interfacing with the nutrition group's chef, executive chef, and interface between the executive chef and our district cafeteria employees, and he'll also be in charge of the evaluation of the food service employees.
And that is because the person from the nutrition group is not authorized to do that, correct?
That is correct. Part of our negotiated agreement is when our employees are evaluated, it has to be a Streetsboro administrator.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
No.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, motion carries.
Item E, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the memorandum of understanding between the Streetsboro City Board of Education and the Streetsboro Education Association.
I'll move.
I will second. Any discussion?
Yes. I would like to begin, I don't know if Mr. Alexa is here, but I would like to publicly thank him. He agreed to do an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education and the SEA that would allow, should, at the end of this year, Michelle could take her place should she choose and things work out that way, that she could have her position back as sixth grade teacher at the middle school. So that took a memorandum of understanding to do that.
That's a win-win, because if for some reason she doesn't want to stay as principal, we have an excellent teacher coming back, and if she wants to stay as principal, we have an excellent principal staying, so it's all good. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell? Mrs. Campbell, sorry.
Mr. Campbell.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and I don't have any more recommendations, but I do have some quick data I want to share if it's okay.
Yes, please.
So I just want to share quickly about the impact of Rocket Digital. I would have done this earlier, but I left it over here, so I apologize about that. So right now, we did a survey, and then we had parents commit to, they have until August 10th to commit to the Rocket Digital Academy. But what we decided to do was put questions in the commitment form that if the district were to start the year in hybrid, would you still want to do Rocket Digital Academy? Or if the district went to full digital, or would you still want to do the Rocket Digital Academy? So under a traditional start, we come back full. We have 155 students in the district that have selected the Rocket Digital Academy format. That will cost us between $99,000 and $124,000 for the semester. Now, going with the questions that I just gave you, if the district starts in a hybrid format, if we were to start in a hybrid format, we asked the people, our parents that were committing, if we're starting in a hybrid format, would you want to do the hybrid or do Rocket Digital? That number went down to 127 people said they would still select Rocket Digital Academy. So that would cost us between $81,000 and $101,000. And the difference is between having our teachers teach versus having the Ohio Online Learning teachers teach, who are certified teachers. And then the final question was, if the district begins the year in a full remote setting, would you choose Rocket Digital Academy, or would you choose going with our teachers in a remote setting? And that number went down to only 44 people would choose the Rocket Digital Academy versus going with our teachers full-time. So that cost then would bring it down to between $29,000 and $37,000. So you can see that if we started out the year in full digital, most of those students would choose our teachers. And then flip that to the other side. If we start full-time, that takes us up to about 155, and then it's 127 if it's in a hybrid model. So I just wanted you to have that data and what the costs were associated with that.
And I just wanted to say that no matter what we do, and no matter what data we have from the state, from the county, or anyone else, the decision for each family is very difficult to make because you're sending your child into the unknown. It's one thing for us to go into the unknown and deal with it, but to send your children into that is very difficult. So just know that, and I think it's safe to say that I speak for the entire board and the administration, is that whatever you choose as a parent for your child for this school year, we will fully support you, only because this is so unknown. And we try to take some of the burden off of the families by covering the cost of Rocket Digital Academy. And that way we're not, if you choose to go to a private online school, we're not losing a lot more than we're actually getting from the state. So we're watching how much we actually lose. But just know that we understand that's a very difficult decision, and we support you no matter what. Anything else, Mike?
No, that concludes my recommendations.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have a spread of the 155 students and what grade levels? they
Yes,
might
I
be
do.
in?
I can
Is
show
it
that to
pretty
you.
even?
No, it's not even.
It's not even?
No. I can read them to you if you want me to. Or do you
I
want to?
can't hear you.
I can read these to you if you want to, or I can show it to you later.
You can show me later.
Okay. I have it right here.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item 4, Board President's recommendation. It is recommended the Board of Education enter into executive session to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes, to consider employment of a public employee or official, and to prepare for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, with possible action to follow.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell? Sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, motion carries. We are in executive session at 8:44 p.m.
And board, we're going to the staff lounge.
That's where we were last time.
Staff lounge.
Oh, okay.
No cookie staff lounge.
There are no cookies.
Talking with Max.
Not the funnest, right?
Oh.
We need a mask break.
We let our speaker go.
I know.